Now once you've managed to do all your repotting like this, you're left with all of this and you think it's such a waste to throw that all away, but what else can I do? Everyone loves your orchids and asks you, can I just have a small piece? These can be like gold. Let me show you how we can make more orchids out of your cut off back bulbs. And you can get this done just by doing your normal maintenance of your orchids and still be able to share. Welcome to the Nature Company. If this is the kind of information you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already, and that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming videos so you don't miss out on a thing. And sometimes there's other reasons that you leave your orchids to their own accord. It's not just from neglect. The wildlife makes their home in it. I'd promised that video on the back bulbs from that last orchid. I'd set everything up so nicely, gone through all the processes, and then realized I hadn't pressed tape. So we're going to have to start from the beginning using this one. I'll cut it short through the process so that we just get to the back bulbs and propagation from them. So this is a much more complex repotting, as it's a much more compact grower, so it's more difficult to get in and find where all the pseudobulbs, and we have all these huge big ants that are trying to bite me. Not very happy. And I've got to be so careful. There's all these beautiful new growths growing and I don't want to break anything. And the reason I didn't go through with my secateurs and just go chopping was because I didn't want to land up with pieces like this. These are not really going to take really easily. They're still worth a try, as we might still get an eye popping out of them somewhere. But you've got very little chance with something like that. But when it's got a section of the rhizome still attached, even if it is just a single individual piece, which is what I used to do when I was propagating commercially, you are going to be waiting a very long time for this to produce a sellable size plant or a plant that's going to flower. So nowadays all I do, because I don't need too many, I'll divide them into sections with 2 or 3 sets of pseudobulbs. There's lots of eye points that will be available for them to produce plants, full plants, relatively quickly. So with these back bulbs, because they're the older parts of the plant, generally all the roots are going to be worthless, so we'll just trim them right off. And then if we look here, we can see there's a nice little eye, a bud coming out there. And if we give this a chance, there'll probably be one that will form down here. So now you know why you don't want to throw away these back bulbs. They can still produce a lot more plants for you. And why not take the chance? Here's a single piece that had come off. And you can see even underneath that mess, the little eye or the bud is still alive. So we won't throw this away. There's enough strength in the pseudobulb to give that all the nutrient it needs to grow up. Even these pieces, although they're far less likely to produce new plants, we do see the swellings at these nodes. Just there, and these are dormant buds that can come to fruition. So what we can do is we can just take a chance, put these both into a single little pot and see if we can get one of them to produce some nice little plantlets for us. And now what I do now is contrary to what everyone else suggests. I use a rooting hormone. Number one, which is a very mild rooting hormone. It's just to give the hormones in these back bulbs just that jump start, just to start on their way. Anything over and above number 1, you're going to start reducing the ability of your shoot to force itself upwards, and that's always what we want, because we know all the new roots are actually only going to come from the new growth, not from these back bulbs. All this is doing is just giving it that tiny little boost to get everything on the go. And so what I do is I separate out a small amount. I don't go dipping my plants into my bucket because that's going to contaminate the rest of my rooting powder. Just taking a small Q-tip, I'll then take it and dab it on those ends that have just been cut. This is going to help seal off those ends faster, so it's less likely for infection to take hold. So there we go, just a light dusting. The balance of this you never put back into your container again. You throw this away into the rubbish bin. So all nicely dusted and ready to be potted up. And because I have these large pieces, I'm going to use these 12 cm pots. Just setting the roots in as you would be transplanting any orchid. And then I use a medium-sized bark chip. The reason I stick with pure bark is because I want to keep these humidity levels up around the plant relatively high. I can then, once I've got all that new growth happening, I can then transplant it into a mix using stone and lacquer and all that other good stuff to get that drainage and that drying that Cattleyas like. But just to start it off with, I like to use this. Just plain fir bark. And if you notice, I set the pseudobulbs in just slightly deeper than I would normally. So it's basically you've just got 1 or 2 little pieces of bark that are now covering the rhizome. And then we're just going to use these stakes because there's not much going to be holding these upright. We just need to make sure that they don't fall all over the place. And these we can tie quite tightly because we don't have to worry about restricting the growth, as all these pseudobulbs are going to do from now on is slowly wither away as the new growth absorbs all that energy that they need to grow out of them. So we can make sure it's nice and securely tightened, even if it is squeezing into the pseudobulb a bit. So, and with these two, what we can do is fill up our pot first. Then just push that in until it's approximately the level of that second node. This again we'll have to stake up. And with these we're just going to be putting them both into the same pot because we don't want to waste media in case neither of them take, and also we don't want to waste all that space. There we go, nice and secure. Here again, when it has no roots, you can just fill up your pot and basically just use the bottom end just to wiggle its way in. Fill up around. You notice we have pushed in a fair amount of that rhizome into the pot, but that's okay. Let's just make sure we stake this up nicely as well. Often with these ones you want to do it around the middle of the pseudobulb, because if you put it to the top it can just slide up, or you put it towards the bottom it can just slide down. This way, if you put it in the middle and give it a good tight squeezing, it should hold itself in place. This single one, we've got the bud point right at the bottom here, so this we're not going to cover terribly deeply into the pot. We'll just fill up around it, ensuring that the bud point there is at the top of the media. And this one we're going to actually make sure we really give that a tight squeeze. So you can see we've squeezed that in to hold it in place until that new growth comes and those new roots start to set. So one of the important things to note is you're going to be doing this during the growing season. Otherwise you're going to be landing up sitting with these pots like this, waiting for something to happen for months and months and months. You're going to start getting worried, you're going to start overwatering, and you'll just rot them and kill them. So make sure it's during the growing season so that they can get those nice good warm temperatures and start producing all that good growth. And now these, I'll go set them in a nice bright position out of the full sun. They'll get some nice dapple shade where I put them. They're going to get nice warm temperatures now. They'll be out of the rain. And also the other thing is I'm not going to water these very much at all. I'm going to let them dry out a lot. All I'm going to do is come through and mist them when I think they need it. If I see the bark is completely dried out, and then I'll give them a good watering just so that we can get some moisture into the bark again, so that they can keep releasing, that humidity around them. But we don't want to have these wet. So there we have it, without terribly much effort, just doing our normal maintenance on our orchids. We've now got 6 new plants that will come up that we can share with our friends and family, or have our own little side table at the next orchid fair. Remember, with these pseudobulbs, if they don't take the first season, if you've got space to keep them and your pseudobulb's still green, just keep them one side, because in the following season there's still that chance that those little buds could form and produce new plantlets. I always land up keeping mine forever until they're really brown and dead, and then of course naturally you have to toss them. But I get such great success like this, even if I'm dividing them up into small pieces. For me, this is the fun part of plants and orchids especially, is allowing nature to do its trick and produce bountiful harvests. So again, keep in a nice warm environment, keep the humidity levels up, preferably do it during growing season so that they can really do their thing in the first season, and don't give up too quickly, as believe me, they're not going to. Also, these back bulbs had very little of this old leaf sheaths that were on them. So if you find that there is this on your back bulbs, just the best idea is to remove all of that, just to make sure it's clean. No extra spot for water to accumulate to cause all that nasty rotting and fungal attacks that we don't want. So go through, clean all of that off your your back bulbs before you pot them up.